Hi, I'm Cynthia from All About ELD. In this video, I'll share how I plan my ELD lessons following a curriculum. This year, we started using Benchmark Express to teach our ELD lessons. General education teachers use Benchmark Advance. At the beginning of each unit, I look at the pacing that the grade level team has created. This is an example from the 5th grade team I support. I do this because to plan my lessons and decide which ELD lesson to teach, I need to know what my students are learning in their classrooms so that I know what background knowledge they might have when I teach a specific lesson, if there are similar lessons in the Express unit, the vocabulary they might know, or even decide if I need to front load vocabulary or reinforce a topic with one of the lessons in the express curriculum. So, this is why this is my first step. At our school, we have access to the grade level pacings that go along with the county. And we also attend planning meetings with one of the grade levels we support. After that, I check my student workbook copy to look at the skills that are being taught in each of the lessons, and I mark the ones I think are the most important ones to teach. Knowing what the grade level will be teaching helps me decide which lessons I should focus on. For example, I might teach this lesson because I know students usually struggle with cause and effect. If this one from the workbook is too difficult, I might create my own lesson on cause and effect. I also check the vocabulary to see if there are words that might be difficult for my multilingual learners, especially my newcomers. Once I have an idea of which lessons I might teach, I look at the learning objectives and language functions in those lessons and the teacher suggestions in the teacher manual. I create my learning targets using these too, so that's why it's helpful to look at them and see what they have planned for in the teacher manual. It also helps me see if there are similarities between the curriculum they use in the classroom and the one we use for ELD. For example, if one of my groups of students needs more support with critical thinking, I might decide to teach this lesson. And I may skip this one on identifying prefixes if I know that my students already covered this lesson in their classroom. Since we don't have enough time to teach every single lesson, it's important to prioritize the ones that will benefit students the most. I also review their unit assessment to analyze the vocabulary and types of questions included. I check whether multiple questions focus on a particular skill or topic. And based on this, I determine what I need to add to my lessons to help my newcomers, for example, or all my multilingual learners better understand and answer the assessment questions when they take their unit test. For example, I noticed that on this assessment, there are multiple questions on problem and solution and on chronological order. So this lets me know that I need to teach those lessons from the curriculum to my students. I also know I need to make sure they understand the meaning of the word chronological. I may use an example they can relate to first, like a social one, and then work with the one on the lessons, which is an academic example. In the workbook, students don't have an example of a timeline like this one, so when I teach chronological order, I will show them different versions of timelines besides the one example they get in their book. So, this is why looking at the whole unit, if you're using a curriculum, and looking at all the other pieces like the assessment and what they learn in their classrooms is important. So, it helps you plan more easily. After identifying all the lessons I want to teach, I add them to my planner to decide which to teach first. Later, I think of ways to modify the lessons and differentiate them for my students. The dates I put on my planner and the lessons are tentative because, as an ELD teacher, you know that schedules always change and something might happen and you might not get to teach that lesson on that day. But if you plan like this, you still have an idea of what to do on the next day if something happened on that day and you couldn't get to your lesson. So I like to look at the big picture, and it helps me feel more comfortable and feel more prepared when I'm teaching my lessons. And here's an example of how I can modify my lessons. If I choose to teach, for example, if I choose to teach the vocabulary lesson, I might use the GLAD strategy observation charts to begin and then have students fill out the blanks in their books. I could also print out the pictures on the vocabulary page and make them bigger and do the inquiry chart GLAD strategy. If I am doing the text lesson, I could break it down for my newcomer group if I have one and have them identify important vocabulary words with color pencils or highlighters and draw pictures or notes about what they read in each section so they are comprehending it and it's broken down in chunks. I might take more than one day, depending on how long my lesson is, to read the text with my different groups, depending on their level. There are many ways to make these lessons more accessible if you're using a curriculum. The important piece is to go through the planning process, decide which lessons your students will benefit from the most, and think about how to make them more accessible to them. And to wrap up, if you are using a curriculum to teach your ELD lessons, the things to do are to look at your grade level pacing, select the most important lessons from the curriculum you were given, identify a skill that your MLs need to excel on the assessment or better understand the concept in the unit, and add your own materials or lessons if needed, and most importantly, make your lessons fun. If you like this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel.